Sinister stories.
It was a joyous time that Saturday afternoon. It was Billy's birthday, and he got that set of walkie-talkies that he always wanted. Now, walkie-talkies weren't as popular as they used to be, but Billy really wanted them. Now, after putting some batteries in them and going upstairs while his parents stayed downstairs, Billy quickly discovered that you can receive police and first responder frequencies. Now Billy's parents didn't think much about it, considering all the calls were mostly lost dog or something else minor like that. Plus, you can barely understand what they are saying. One night, Billy received a transmission on the walkie-talkie of a 911 call of strange man lurking outside people's houses. Now these calls started coming through every night, and every night Billy would pretend to be polite officer and take the calls. Until one night after one of those calls, Billy once again pretended to respond, but this time a voice came over walkie-talkie. The voice played along with Billy. The voice told Billy that he was a police officer looking for the strange man. As the days passed, Billy's fascination with the walkie-talkies and the mysterious voice grew. Each night, he would eagerly wait for the strange transmissions, feeling like a real detective helping the police. The voice on the other end seemed kind and reassuring, and Billy felt a sense of camaraderie with this police officer who had taken an interest in him. One evening, the voice on the walkie-talkie told Billy that they had finally located the strange man, and that he was just a few houses away from Billy's home. The voice asked Billy to stay on the line and keep an eye out for anything unusual. Filled with excitement and a sense of importance, Billy eagerly agreed, vowing to be the best assistant the voice had ever had. As Billy peered out of his bedroom window, he saw a shadowy figure lurking around the house next door. He couldn't see the person clearly, but the fear began to creep in as he realized that the danger was closer than he had anticipated. The voice on the walkie-talkie reassured him, "Don't worry, Billy, you're doing great. Just keep watching and I'll handle the rest." Suddenly, the stranger turned and looked directly at Billy's window, sending a shiver down his spine. The voice urged him to stay quiet and not make any sudden movements. Billy's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the figure move towards his house. Just then, the voice on the walkie-talkie changed. It became darker and sinister, sending a chill down Billy's spine. "You thought you were helping the police, didn't you, Billy?" it said mockingly. "But you're just a little pawn in my game. And now, it's time for the game to end." Terrified and confused, Billy dropped the walkie-talkie and backed away from the window. He didn't know who he had been talking to all this time, but one thing was clear. He was in danger. Billy knew he had to get help, but he couldn't reach his parents downstairs in time. As he frantically searched for his cell phone, he heard the creaking of the floorboards behind him. He turned around, and there stood the stranger, a tall, menacing figure with a chilling smile on his face. "You've been quite the helpful little boy, haven't you?" the stranger sneered. "But now I'm afraid you know too much." Billy's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to scream, but fear paralyzed his voice. Billy fell to the floor and tried to crawl away, but the stranger's footsteps sounded louder and faster. Just as the stranger reached out to grab him, the bedroom door burst open, and Billy's parents rushed in. Startled, the stranger stepped back, giving Billy a chance to escape. He ran into his parents' arms, sobbing and trying to explain what had happened. His father, a former police officer, grabbed the walkie-talkie and demanded the stranger to leave. But the man just laughed, taunting them from the window before disappearing into the night. The police were called, and an investigation was launched into the mysterious transmissions and the stranger who had terrorized Billy. However, despite their efforts, the true identity of the voice on the walkie-talkie and the stranger remained a mystery. From that day on, Billy's walkie-talkies remained silent, and he vowed never to use them again. The incident had left him traumatized, and he couldn't forget the sinister voice that had manipulated him. As the years passed, Billy tried to put the terrifying ordeal behind him, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching him, waiting for the right moment to strike again. In the heart of a dense forest, two adventurous boys, Jake and Alex, stumbled upon a mysterious cell phone lying on the ground. The phone was old and battered, but curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to have some fun by sending silly texts to random contacts saved on the device. Little did they know that this innocent game would lead them down a dark and terrifying path. As they sent their humorous messages, they laughed at the thought of the recipient's confusion upon receiving strange texts from unknown numbers. But the laughter quickly faded when one of the contacts responded with a series of chilling pictures. The boys saw themselves still standing in the very woods they were in, as if someone had been watching them all along. Their hearts pounding with fear, they ran back home, hoping to escape whatever eerie presence was tormenting them. But as they reached the safety of their house, the phone kept receiving messages with new pictures. Each photo showed the boys' surroundings, getting closer and closer to their home. Panicking, they tried to ignore the messages and focus on other things, but the constant ding of the phone and the haunting images on the screen wouldn't leave their minds. As the evening wore on, the pictures showed their street, their front yard, and finally, the chilling last image was a selfie of a hooded figure holding a large knife. Trembling with fear, the boys huddled together, unsure of what to do next. They had no idea who was behind this horrifying game, but they knew they had to find a way to escape. They considered calling the police, but they were afraid that if they made any sudden moves, the sinister figure might escalate the situation. With the darkness of the night setting in, they decided to lock all doors and windows, hoping that would keep them safe. But the texts kept coming, and with each message, the hooded figure seemed to get closer and closer to their house. As the clock ticked on, the boys could barely contain their terror. They tried calling their parents, but their phones were dead, and they couldn't reach anyone for help. All they could do was wait in dread, hoping that the nightmare would end soon. Hours passed, and the house grew colder and darker. The boys' nerves were at their breaking point, and they were on the verge of tears. Suddenly, the phone dinged with one final message. Fear gripped them as they opened the picture. It was a chilling selfie of the hooded person standing just outside their front door, the glint of the knife visible in the dim light. Realizing that their lives were in immediate danger, they knew they had to make a desperate move. Together, they decided to try and escape through the back door and make a run for it, hoping to find help or a place to hide. As they quietly opened the back door, the night air felt heavy with the weight of their fear. They cautiously stepped outside, hearts pounding, and ran as fast as their legs could carry them. The forest loomed before them, but they knew they had no other choice but to keep going. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, they ran deeper into the woods, praying that they were leaving the sinister figure behind. But every rustle of leaves and every snap of a twig sent shivers down their spines, and they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Finally, they stumbled upon a small cabin, seemingly abandoned. Desperate for safety, they cautiously entered, hoping to find some form of communication or help. But the cabin was just as eerie as the woods, filled with dusty furniture and cobwebs. Their hope of finding help faded, and they knew they had to rely on each other. They huddled in a corner, holding each other tightly, trying to find solace in each other's presence. The night seemed endless, and the boys were unsure if they would survive until dawn. As the first rays of sunlight crept through the windows, they cautiously ventured back outside, not knowing if the hooded figure was still lurking. But to their relief, there was no sign of the mysterious stalker. They made their way back home, shaken and traumatized by the harrowing experience. The phone, now silent, lay discarded on the floor. They decided to destroy it, hoping that it would bring an end to the nightmare they had endured. In the days that followed, the boys tried to put the terrifying ordeal behind them. They couldn't explain what had happened, and they were too scared to share their story with anyone else. But the images of that hooded figure and the large knife haunted them, a constant reminder of the darkness that could hide in the most unexpected places. From that day on, Jake and Alex vowed never to venture into the woods again. They couldn't forget the horrors they had faced, and they knew they would never be the same. The mystery of the lost cell phone and the sinister figure behind it remained unsolved, leaving them with a chilling uncertainty.